In this video, we are going to open up an Excel file, look at the data, add a few more cases, and then define the data, put in our labels and things like that. So I currently have a data set up. If you close the only data set you have open in SPSS, it closes SPSS. So I often just jump straight from one into another. So you're going to generally have to get used to paying attention to having lots of stuff up. Now I also have this output file that I've just done. I can close that, and I want to because I'm going to start working on a different data set now, so I don't need to keep this. If I wanted to save this and so that I had this information to put into a paper later, I would just do File, Save As. When I do that, I have the option of saving it as an SPV file, which is an output file in SPSS, or I could save it as an SPSS web report, which is essentially an HTML page, which is a good choice if you are going to be creating a web document with these objects inside of it. But essentially, we'll deal later with how do I get this stuff into a Word document or something like that. But I always just save my stuff as SPV. I'm giving it a name and save. And then now I can close it. See how it's a separate file? I can just close it. And it doesn't do anything. It doesn't care. If I try to close this one, it's going to say, closing the last data editor will exit it. Do you want to proceed? No, I don't. I still want to be in SPSS. So instead, I'm just going to go ahead and open up my new file. I can close this when I'm done. So it's an Excel file, which means it's not going to immediately show up when I go to File, Open Data. It's not going to be on I'm going to my desktop here where I know that it is. It's not there. There are no SAV or ZSAV files here. I need to change this to Excel. And there, now all my Excel files will show up and I see it, and I'm going to pick it and say open. And it's going to ask me some stuff here. Do I have variable names in the first row of data? I do, so I'm going to leave that like it is. Percentage of values that determine data type. So SPSS is going to try to guess what type of data it is, if it's numerical or if it's text. And so if 95% of the cells in a given column are numbers, for instance, it'll decide that it's numeric, and which means it's going to kind of mess with the other 5%. In general, this doesn't matter that much because we can always change something from numeric to text. Ignore hidden rows and columns. In Excel, you can have hidden rows and columns and ignore them or not. Remove leading spaces from string values. This is super, super important, and trailing spaces unless those have some meaning, because otherwise the blank, all that means is you have blanks in front of the start of some text. Do you want me to remove those so that there's not some difference between those that have blanks and don't have blanks? Or you entered a blank at the end of some text. I like to do this so that later, if I'm sorting out my stuff or trying to put them all into a certain value that has a label, I'm not having to go back through and figure out where are there blanks that I can't see. So I tend to go ahead and just check all these. Doesn't matter a whole lot. Make sure that it's just the worksheet you want. In this case, it's the first sheet in my workbook. And I'm going to say OK. There we go. It's brought it in. It's given me my labels. Here's my data. Everything's nice. Let's say I have a few more cases to add. I can do that here. There's case number 11. This is another 6-year-old who made a 70 on the test. And then case number 12 is going to be another 8-year-old who made a 75 on the test. There we go. I've added in new data. When I come down here to variable view, it's decided these are all numeric, which is good, makes sense. They were all numeric. There, data view. See, variable view. 2 characters wide, no decimals, no labels or values or anything like that yet. In order to enter a label, I just double click on that. Case identification. It's a pain if you misspell. Yeah. Identification. No spell check in SPSS. Age. That one's pretty straightforward. Age. Score. spatial analysis score. There we go. Values, because these are all straight numeric continuous variables, there's no value to really apply to any of the no label to apply to any of the values here. I'm just going to leave everything else like it is. This is actually not quite right. They really are continuous variables, but that makes no difference whatsoever. All right, so I've opened up an Excel file and I have entered data and I have gone to my variable view to define my data. And that will get you well set up to do some analysis of this kind of small data set.